In summation, Sam Bankman-Fried, the former CEO of FTX, steal billions from customers, go down swinging and lying, play League of Legends in your Bahamian mansion for weeks afterwards, claim you're broke and sad, get arrested, somehow make $250 million bond, spend Christmas at home chilling, make this face on the way to mom's car.
Is there any evidence of his parents' involvement in the operations?
Well, certainly, clearly, and I think in our first day papers we indicated that Mr. Bankman had given legal advice.
Okay, had he been an employee of FTX, as has been reported?
I don't know if he actually had an employee status,
Okay.
but he certainly received payments from, the family did receive payments.
Okay, that sounds like employment to me. You got a payment for, okay.
Last week, we announced charges against Samuel Bankman-Fried for a sweeping fraud scheme that contributed to FTX's collapse, and for a campaign finance scheme that sought to influence public policy in Washington. As I said last week, this investigation is very much ongoing, and it's moving very quickly. I also said that last week's announcement would not be our last, and let me be clear once again, neither is today's. I want to make two announcements. First, I'm announcing that the Southern District of New York has filed charges against Caroline Ellison, the former CEO of Alameda Research, and Gary Wang, a co-founder of FTX, in connection with their roles in the frauds that contributed to FTX's collapse. Both Ms. Ellison and Mr. Wang have pled guilty to those charges, and they are both cooperating with the Southern District of New York. Let me reiterate a call that I made last week. If you participated in misconduct at FTX or Alameda, now is the time to get ahead of it. We are moving quickly, and our patience is not eternal. Second, I'm announcing that Samuel Bankman-Fried is now in FBI custody and is on his way back to the United States. He will be transported directly to the Southern District of New York, and he will appear in court before a judge in this district as soon as possible. Many individuals in the Bahamas and in the United States contributed to the swiftness of the defendant's return, and I want to thank the Bahamas for its outstanding assistance and excellent coordination with us. I also want to thank our partners at the United States Embassy in the Bahamas and the Justice Department's Office of International Affairs. And finally, I want to thank the FBI for moving mountains to get this done. This was a true team effort. Finally, I want to thank the career prosecutors from my office who were handling this case. We continue to work around the clock, and we are far from done. Thank you.
No, out, 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 out. I'll be down the driveway. No, you can't go on the property. You know that. I'm on the sidewalk. Yo, you can't go on the property, guys. But you gotta let him out. You gotta let him out. You gotta let him out. Sam, let him out.
Sam Bankman-Fried is walking out of the courthouse in Lower Manhattan, Tyler, where he just posted a $250 million bail. Now, that number is raising tons of eyebrows over the size of it. It's one of the biggest we've seen for a situation like this. Where the funds came from, as Mackenzie Segalos reported last hour, they are in part secured by real estate owned by his parents. His parents also had to co-sign for this bail. This is the blue suit he's been wearing, as by all reports, in so many of these appearances lately. But here we seem to be getting some of the first pictures of him back on U.S. soil.
And the terms of his bail, as I saw in the last hour, include a tracking device
forfeiture of his passport, and other location monitoring, home detection, so on and so forth. That could, and I assume he will be restricted to probably the tri-state area. Who knows?
I think she said Northern California.
Oh, is that right?
And the understanding is, I believe he's been living with his parents in the near term. But again, it is a very, very large bail that he has just posted. And now we're able to finally get a look at him after only seeing and hearing reports about his demeanor throughout the course of this extradition period in the previous days.
Sam Bankman-Fried is moving back into his house, his parents' house, rather, as part of his $250 million bail agreement. He appeared in a Manhattan court yesterday after being extradited from the Bahamas. He was granted bail, on the condition that he hand over his passport and stay within Northern California and certain parts of New York. He also needs to submit to mental health counseling. He's also got to wear an electronic monitoring bracelet and needs government approval for expenses above $1,000. The judge decided Bankman-Fried wasn't a flight risk since he's gained what they called sufficient notoriety, making it impossible to engage in more financial crimes without being recognized. His parents, both Stanford law professors, put up equity in their $4 million home in Palo Alto to secure that bond. You can see the house here, those aerial shots. It'll also be signed by at least one non-family member. It also needs to be total signed by 4 people. Bankman-Fried doesn't need to post that full dollar amount, but his parents are on the hook for that if he flees or fails to show up to any upcoming court appearances. The U.S. attorney called the alleged crimes a fraud of epic proportions. He said that it's the largest ever pretrial bond that they had seen. Real estate investor and Trump associate Tom Barrack's bond was actually at a similar level around $250 million. SBF's bond is 25 times bigger than Bernie Madoff's. To put it in context there, the former Enron CEO put up about $5 million. Elizabeth Holmes was set at $500,000. It comes as Bankman-Fried's top lieutenants, Caroline Ellison and Gary Wong, pleaded guilty to fraud charges and are cooperating with law enforcement. Bankman-Fried was indicted in federal courts earlier this month. His next court date, Kelly, is coming up on January 3rd.
How crucial is the fact that they've turned on him, basically? That's
key. And then we also got some new information as far as a plea deal that was unveiled today. And federal prosecutors, it says, they kept it basically sealed until Sam Bankman-Fried got on the plane so that he wouldn't avoid extradition. So knowing that, it seems like that would have been a huge factor here in his deciding to come back to the U.S. I'm told by legal experts that this really does not leave him a lot of wiggle room. These are his 2 top associates. They're not, average FTX or Alameda employees. These 2 people, Caroline Ellison and Gary Wong, would know exactly what happened here. And others, I'm told, the fact that he accepted extradition, took this bond, there's signs that he is likely willing to cooperate and may be looking to strike a deal of his own.
Right, and it's sort of like as Matt Levine was saying yesterday, that if they hadn't turned against him, they all could have tried to make the case for, hey, this is how an exchange operates. One customer just had a really big margin position, and he said, but once they flip, once they say, nope, he stole the money, it's all his fault, this was his plan, his intention, his doing, it's going to be a tough case.
Prisoner's dilemma, right? That's it could have worked that way, that if they all were on the same page. But clearly now that it's sort of everybody's singing. And the other thing that the prosecutor said this week, they were really calling other people and saying, hey, guys, we clearly have 2 of the top associates. If you're involved here and you're willing to speak, we're still looking into other people and other people close to the company. So it's not clear that any of this is over. There's other top executives that might not be culpable here.
Yeah, it's going to be tougher and tougher for him. Now the over-under seems to be on how many years he will serve. Yeah. So that we'll save that for next time.
Reactions across social media soured on the decision of a Manhattan federal judge after the judge granted bail to FTX founder Sam Bankman-Fried. Bankman-Fried was released from custody yesterday after appearing in a U.S. court for the first time on charges accusing him of defrauding FTX customers and investors. So why did the judge agree to free Bankman-Fried from custody? Let's bring in Yahoo Finance legal reporter Alexis Keenan. Alexis, this is a case that the U.S. attorney over in the Southern District of New York claimed was the biggest financial fraud in American history, one of the biggest. $250 million is nothing to sneeze at, but a lot of people are surprised.
Yeah, a lot of people upset with the judge across social media, as you said. So this right to bail, though, it's really governed by the Constitution's 8th Amendment, particularly. Now, it's not an absolute right, but it does prohibit what's called excessive bail. And that flows from the fact that in the U.S., a criminal defendant is presumed innocent until they're proven guilty in a court of law. So there are two central questions, two justifications, actually, that a judge is going to look at. And there's two that in particular allow a judge to detain a defendant. And one is to keep the public safe. If they're a threat to the community's safety, the judge can say, you got to stay behind bars. Second is to ensure that the defendant will actually show up in court to face the charges against him or her. So in Bankman-Fried's case, like in most white collar cases, the judge said, well, Bankman-Fried is not a danger to the community, despite those that argue otherwise, perhaps financial risks, they say. So this case really, for the judge yesterday, it turned on flight risk. And to combat flight, the judge can impose financial and other types of consequences. So that's one reason why you saw the judge agree to the prosecutor's request of that whopping $250 million bond. Now, typically, a defendant needs to pledge enough assets that equal about 10% of that bond amount. So here in this case, it would be $25 million. Bankman-Fried's bond is secured in part by his family's, his parents' $4 million Palo Alto home. He also needs to get these signatures between 2 and 4. I'm not quite clear. I haven't got a clear answer whether it's 2 people or 4 people, but they have to be folks that have, quote, considerable means. They've got to be wealthy people to help substantiate the fact that they're going to make sure and attest to the fact and put their financial assets at risk to make sure he shows up in court. So that is how that works. The judge also set some additional conditions, home detention. Bankman-Fried has to wear a monitor, electric monitor. He has limited means to go about Northern California as well as a few places in New York. Also, he had to surrender his passport, and he also cannot make financial transactions that exceed $1,000 without some additional authority. Akiko?
All right, I'll pick it up from here. I mean, being monitored at home when you're in a $4 million home, not too shabby, much better than, I guess, the Bahamian prison. A big thank you to Alexis Keenan there.
A judge released him on $250 million bond with a lot of stipulations. He will live with his parents.
$250 million. We've never seen anything like it. What a number. His parents had to co-sign on the deal, put their house up as collateral to help secure it.
You heard that right. $250 million his parents just paid to release Sam Bankman-Fried. The highest bill ever. But where did they get this money from? His parents put up their houses as collateral for this deal. But his parents' houses? Haven't we heard a story about that before? Didn't they get the money from Sam to buy their houses? Yes, Sam Bankman-Fried used the money of FTX clients to buy real estate for his parents. The story just keeps on getting crazier and crazier.
Not interested in taking questions. Bankman-Fried, when he was in the courtroom earlier today, was just sitting right in between 2 of his lawyers, listening to the prosecutor call his bail deal the largest ever pretrial bond. It requires him to surrender his passport and also undergo regular mental health treatment and evaluation. Really, the only time he spoke today at all was when the judge asked him if he understood the conditions of his release. Yes, I do, he said. The other condition he needs to understand now is that 2 former colleagues are ready to testify against him. Caroline Ellison is one of them, former head of Alameda Research. That's the trading firm closely connected to FTX. She pleaded guilty on 7 counts, while the FTX co-founder Gary Wang pleaded guilty on 4 counts. Both of them are now cooperating with prosecutors. So for now, here's this 30-year-old Sam Bankman-Fried, months ago heading up a company that was said to be valued at $32 billion himself. A billionaire several times over, headed to his parents' home in California to await trial on charges that could send him to jail for a very long time.